Right, what we're doing here, we have to bore it out, and it's going to be bored out from there to, so that diameter, which is approximately 1.624 thou or thereabouts. Now that is because the boring bar is in thousandths of an inch, it's not in the metric equivalent. I can give you all the metrics, but that's neither here nor there right this minute. And also I have to go to a depth that's the overall thickness of this is 26 mil or 1 inch or thereabouts, and it has to have about 23 mil taken out with about an eighth of an inch or 3 mil shoulder left in there so that the bearing can go against it. Alright, what I've done is I did most of the cutting out off camera because it just takes too long and you have to make sure you're doing the right thing. So that's got about a 5 thou press fit, which is, if I just push that there, it's got a fair bit of tension in it. So I've got a shoulder down there, which like I said is about 3 mil. Then that will be actually pressed right down to the bottom. Actually, you can see the shoulder there. That'll be pressed onto that, and then and what I'll do very shortly, I'll bring the fly cutter in and I'll face it all off and make it nice and clean and shiny. There you go, nice and shiny. Alright, we've got the unit here now. As you can see, that's nice and shiny and everything. It's all done. That's where I've recessed the back of it. So all we need to do now is, and you can see that shoulder, there it is, see the shoulder inside. So what I'll be doing is pressing the bearing, set up against that shoulder, then we'll start fitting it. Right, now we've got that bearing pressed in, and as you can see, that's flush with the back of that, and that's our little bit of a shoulder on the back for so it doesn't go right through. Yeah, and there we go. So now we'll go and we'll fit it on, and we'll use these pilot holes to secure it and bolt it all down. Alright, that's our Y. Now I have got this piece in here. Now that goes around the shaft and it lines everything up, so that's all central. Now this piece that we've got here, now what we're doing is we're sliding that onto the shaft like so. Now that'll sit right back, and there we go, we've got it sitting right back. Now that shoulder I made up, which is that one in here and there, that's the complete back section that I've machined out, say in there. Now that's all sitting flush on the machine, as you can see, so that's pretty good. So what we'll do now is I'm going to, well, that's all, I'll get that so it's exactly perfect in the alignment that I want. Then I'll clamp that like from there underneath inside. Then I'm going to drill my 4 well, there'll be 3 pilot bolts. One I've already done in this proper size, but anyway, there'll be pilot bolts put through, and then they will be drilled out. The bulk of this is actually 10 mil, but the threaded section will be drilled out to 9 mil for a 10 mil thread. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. Alright, we've got 3 of them done, or just one more at the back, and we should be right. We've got the front of the mill here. That's the Y section, or that's the one that actually moves the actual table forwards and backwards. Now this is the adapter that I've made. I've had to take 5 mil out of the back here, and that is to compensate for this raised portion on here. So there's 5 mil difference or thereabouts, and also I've made a slight little shoulder there for the bearing so it can't go right through, and also once it's there it shouldn't move. So that's that part. Then I've just got the bearing, as you can see, it's pushed right in. So what we'll do is, now that just slides on like so. Now what I've had to do is, because I have got parallel ends, they're nice and flat, the machine surface is a fraction out. So what I've had to do is I have to shim up the actual corner over here. Anyway, these are I've got a couple of shims made up, so they actually sit in behind here as soon as I can line them up. Okay, I've got a set of shims which will sit over here like so. Then I've got another set of shims which go off the bottom down here as well. So they'll sit in there like so. Now, as I'm nipping it up, I'm turning the shaft just to make sure it's free, so it doesn't bind anywhere. Now, I'm just putting the old key back in. It's a bit destroyed, but I only need it so that I can put the wheel on, so I can just check, make sure it's not binding anywhere, and it's nice and free. So it's nice and free at the moment. So what I'll do is I'll just nip these ones up. Recheck the wheel again. Well, so it's nice and free, no problem at all. Now what? That is pretty well ready to sit as it is. I'll just recheck these just to make sure again. Nice and free. I've got the dowel pins which I've made up. Our next port of contact, so to speak, because that's all pretty well on. It's finished now. I'm not worried about a bit of excess hanging out. Now that is my old key there. Now the next process is I've got There's a tube like this one here that actually sits over that, and that will sit up and lock up against the bearing, so that when you screw the shaft out, that will come out. And what's going to happen next is the actual motor here. Where are we? Then that will actually come on here, and then that will slide right on. So my next port of call now is will be to locate one hole here at the 2 and the 10 o'clock position, and then we'll just put we could put 2 screws in, and then that'll be on. So I've got this horizontal, and I'll show the other one on the left hand side, but this mainly the Y. So once that's bolted up, it'll be solid as, so that's not going to move anywhere. I might even put one there and one here, I don't know yet, but normally they just go straight across. So that'll be my next port of call. Now that's a pilot hole. What we'll do is take it out to 8mm now. Alright, we've threaded the hole now, and we'll just put this back on for a minute. That slides back in like so. If I've done it properly. Yeah, that's it. If we have, that should line up in there somewhere. And what it like is, I'm using a 8mm by 1.25. It's better than a little tiny 6mm. Now that's fairly solid there. Now okay, what we've got here at the moment is I've just got this on temporary. I've taken my plate and everything off. Now this is the extension that comes with the kit. Now that has to screw on there. Now what I did just to be rough, also I just threw a tap inside in there, that's all, which isn't the right thing. But anyway, what happens is when everything goes back on here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend that, I'm going to lock that on, and then I'm going to extend that right through to about here. So this way I can get the unit that's on, same as what that is, right? And then the actual brass gear will go on here, and then of course it has to be locked on. So I thought, I've got a little short piece there, I thought just to make sure I'm making a brand new one of these shafts, and then that will be extended right through once it's locked on. This way it can be removed later on if necessary. I don't want to pin it because the thread on here, whoops, the thread on here is 12 by 1.75, so by the time you drill that you've lost a fair bit, and I'm not really interested in that. So plus this thread on the end is different, as you can see, so that's a probably a 1/2 inch UNF thread or something like that. But this one here is a metric, it's 12 by 1.75, so I'm going to make that, and that'll have the proper thread extension on the end. And then what will happen is eventually that wheel will be able to just go straight on. So that's that part. Now to get to that, so what we've got here now is we've got the gear here. Now to run that I have to put a special 35 tooth gear on that, and that runs on the inside, which is a 120, and then that's a 127 on the outside, as you can see. And then I've got a I think it's a 40 tooth, which is here. So that's the gear ratios that are on the machine that have to be there. And then what we do is when we come back to the chart, and I'm only doing this because some people like to know these sort of things, but that's fine. So I've got my metric there, So when I go to 175, which is there, that has to have, like I said, a 35 and a 40 tooth, right? So now that has to go on 2 and S. So we've got a 2 and an S down here. Now up above here, the gear, which is the A, which is a 35, it shows it's on the 127, and the 40 sits on there as well. So all of that works out quite well. Once that's done, then we come a bit further down, and on here we've got an indicator table. Now on here it's got 175 right there. There we go. Will it focus? Yeah, sort of. So that's 175. So what we do, we come over to the carriage. When we're over at the carriage here, I have counted the teeth, and I've got 3 sections, 3 holes, as you can see. My 28 teeth there. So I'll lift that up, contact the gear, the mesh, tighten it up so that when I sort of spin it, now that should all give me a 1.75 thread, which will be going onto that end. Alright, just going to check, make sure that we're on 175. Right, that looks pretty spot on. Now that's a pretty good fit. So now what I'll do is I'll drill a hole, and I'll do the other side. So the other side, like that's where the wheel goes on. So that's the external. Now I have to do an internal one. Okay, now this is the Y section, as you know. Well, it's in the middle. Now this is the shaft that I've pulled out. That's the one that goes inside the hole, and you wind it. Now what I've done is, because there's an extension shaft here, this is the unit that they've supplied, which is the wrong thread on here. It's a UNF thread instead of a metric thread, and this thread here is metric, where once you put the wheel in, then you got the lock nut on there. Well, that's a UNF thread as well. So what I've done, I've made a complete new unit which is screwed in. Now what you're supposed to do is drill a hole through there and pin it, but because it's only a 3/8, or well, it's 12 mil, whatever that is. So what I've done is I've screwed the piece I've made here, I screwed that on, and I put some Loctite on the threads. And then what I've done, I've cut a groove which is for the woodruff key, or for the keyway, and that's gone right through to there. So what will happen is, in essence, is I've got a one here which I'll cut to whatever length I need it to, round that off, and then the whole hand wheel and everything will go on here. Everything will go on here, and then it's actually got this in here for the actual drive gear, which is this one. That will go on straight through onto your gears, and then that'll be locked in. So because it's Loctite, I'm not going to pin it. That should hold it enough, especially when it's got the key and everything in there. Also what I'm doing is I've got this piece here which I've been using to put in here, and that has been locating everything. Like that actually goes in here. Normally it's a pretty snug sort of a fit. Anyway, I'll just, there we go, that's nice and easy. Now that's a piece I've been using at this stage, and then that's been centering on this unit here, on there, and that's lined everything up, because everything has to be lined up according to the bearing. So what I'm going to do now is, I've got a spare one of these as well. Now this particular one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that completely in half, in 2 pieces. I'll put that back in, and I'll work it so it's sitting right on the back edge of it. I'll screw the shaft in first, then push it in so I can grab it from behind, assemble everything, then I'll just pull that out the back, and that won't interfere on anything. And then what will happen is, that's my front plate unit, so everything will be sitting on that bearing there. So that will actually go through like so. Okay, so that's what we're going to attempt to do. Now I've just pushed the two half spacers in there, and what I'm going to do is actually push them through a bit further. What I'm actually doing now is I'm pushing one so it's to the bottom, so when it does come out it'll fall out a lot easier. Just that I have to make sure I've got an edge on there. Okay, so that will pretty well line that bearing up, or well, that's what it should be doing anyway. Now the bearing is a snug fit. There we go. Just a tight spot just in here, that's all it was. Now, that is actually sitting right back now. So all we need to do now is put some bolts in here. Now also what's happening is, because the actual face on the machine here is not square, or it's not flat going horizontal vertical so to speak, even though this is there, I have to put a few shims in behind here, which will just line it all up so it works and fits properly. So I'll bring you back since it's bolted up. Alright, at this stage I've pulled out the two half bushes, which is like these two from behind, from inside. That's all bolted up, that's all tight as. Now that's a spacer that goes against the bearing. Now what I've done here, I've actually taken a bit off the edge to make the centre proud, just to make sure that when that goes in, that's definitely on the centre or the inside race of the bearing. So what we'll do now is we'll start assembling. Oh, better put some oil and grease in first. Now what I've done here, instead of just a couple of 6mm bolts in there, I've put in these 8mm ones, which I think is a lot better, a lot stronger. And what I did do, I made a thread in here, but I found that it just didn't like it sitting there. So what I've done, I've just re-drilled it and put the other hole down here, which is a better stabilisation area for the overall unit. Let's take the weight off that. Now I have to make sure that that's nice and free, which it is. I'll just find the best position for that. Yeah, that's about the best place for that. Now you have to keep, as you nip it up, just keep checking, make sure that that is okay. Okay, as I stated before, I made this Keyway, and I've actually made it out of 5mm, and it's extended right through there. Now where the little problem is the keyway that's inside this gear, it's only probably, well, it's probably about 1/8 of an inch, something like that. Now, a lot of people, they turn around, they get a keyway, then they have to put a big piece in, cut it down. So what I've decided to do like that, and then I'll just recut that keyway there, and I'll make it 5mm like that, so I can just push that on like that'll go on, not a problem. And yeah, anyway, we'll go through adjustments later on. And then once it's on, that'll be on with the correct key in there. This way it's all uniform, and for future reference it'll be spot on. This is my broaching kit. Now this particular one is metric. Now I've got quite a few mandrels in here. That's small into a larger one, and the problem there is that all the mandrels I've got will not fit in that hole now, because that's been machined to suit the other shaft. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make a mandrel very similar to this. I'll pull this one out and have a look if I can get it out one-handed. Anyway, that's a mandrel that's in there now, and that's to suit the actual key that goes in there. Now what happens is, or the broach, that will go into there, that's not a problem, but as you can see there's a fair bit of movement in there. So what I have to do is make a new one of these that'll fit right into there. So I'll make an identical twin to that one, except it'll be a bigger OD and it'll be a fraction longer, so that it'll go right through the gear instead of part of it. This way I can put a proper 5mm broached segment in there. Anyway, we'll get on the lathe and then we'll go from there.